Yeah, I remember a night on my PCT through hike when I had to camp alone, and I was camping alone after having formed a family and camping with other people for quite a few weeks. And every rustle in the bushes sounded like a predator lurking. Spoiler, it wasn't. But that night, something unexpected happened that changed the way I would look at fear forever. And so let's break it down. Hey y'all, I'm Jeffrey, and welcome to this first episode of Trail Boss, a semi-helpful guide to conquering your backpacking fears. This 9-part series is here to help you crush any of those fears or keeping you from hitting the trail so that you can live the adventurous life that you want. I pulled my audience of, 250,000-ish outdoor enthusiasts to learn what their biggest fears were keeping them from the outdoors. I asked them if there was one thing keeping them from it, what it was. And today we're going to tackle those. We're starting with the the item that got the least votes, but still plenty of votes, to the thing that got the most votes. And here in this very first episode, we are going to tackle social stress. Now that includes things like camping alone, managing relationships back home if you're on a through hike or a longer hike, and then of course, the dreaded fear of not finishing and failing. Now, so this time that I camped alone for the first time, we've all been there. If you've been camping, you were certain that every rustle was a bear. Spoiler, it was a chipmunk, but it still was a really memorable night that taught me some pretty important lessons. Now, before we dive in, make sure to grab my free ebook up in the corner, Trail Boss, a semi-helpful guide to conquering your backpacking fears. It goes along with this entire video series, recaps what we're going to talk about here, and provides some more tips and tricks as well. So click that link in the corner, or you can find the link in the description below. It's got tons of practical tips to help you overcome those trail fears and start exploring with confidence. Okay, let's dive straight in. So first and foremost, let's start with a fear of camping alone. Now, the thought of being alone in the woods can feel super duper spooky, but here's the thing. Solitude is kind of where the magic happens. Most people you meet on the trail are friendly hikers, just like you. They're focused on snacks and blisters and getting to the next water source, not sneaking up on your tent in the middle of the night being creepy. Now, I'm not saying this is not a legitimate fear. I have certainly felt it on multiple occasions. But the thing is, the biggest challenge of solo camping is not safety. It's you. Loneliness and overthinking can turn every single twig snap into, a colossal bear. But here's the thing. With a little preparation, you're not only going to feel safe, you're going to feel empowered. And I feel empowered with facts. So I'm going to be dropping lots of hot numbers on you because often our fears play an outsized role inside our minds. And when we look at the numbers, they really aren't as big of a risk as our brain thinks they are. Still to be respected, but not something to keep us from the outdoors. Now, while it's a super legitimate fear, here are a couple reasons why you shouldn't be scared. Statistically, trails are some of the safest places on Earth that you could be. Violent crime on popular trails is rarer than me skipping desert sections. Trust me, it's almost non-existent. Despite what the fear-mongering YouTube videos about disappearing hikers may lead you to believe, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but once you look at the numbers, it's so much more safe than it can feel at times. And the other benefit of solo camping is it lets you set your own pace. You get to set your own pace, you get to choose your own campsite, and you can eat that questionable ramen burrito with nobody judging you. Okay, a few practical tips for camping alone. First and foremost, if you're uncomfortable camping alone, pick campsites that are close to other hikers. This way you're going to feel less isolated, even though you're not camping with the other people. Now, that's not always possible. You cannot bank on that. But most campsites are, in most parts of the US at least, are together or close-ish together. Even on the PCT, there might be an individual campsite, but there's another one just a stone's throw down the trail. So you can, while you cannot always bank on being able to camp with other people on something like a thru-hike or really any backpacking trip, if you plan ahead, you can increase the chances of having other humans around. And that can go a really long way in making you feel more comfortable. Next, download that stuff in advance, because if you bring a book, a podcast, a journal, something to keep your mind busy, a little distraction goes a long way. I understand why you don't want electronics out in nature. So if that's not your jam, bring a notebook, journal, but just something to do, because it can be boring, and boredom can make your brain. And hey, a pro tip, a whistle. It's obviously a safety tool, but it's also a confidence booster. 3 blasts on a whistle is the universal distress signal. But honestly, it's also great for scaring off those imaginary bears. Okay, next, let's talk about the social stress that can come with leaving loved ones behind. Now, whether it's a partner, kids, pets giving you the side eye as you pack your bags, this fear is super legitimate and not super relevant to short-term trips, but for longer backpacking trips, and especially a Thru-Hike, this becomes a really big factor. Now, there's a lot of reasons to respect this and to put some effort into addressing it before your trip, because distance can be really hard on relationships of all varieties, especially if your expectations are not clear. So it's really, really important to plan ahead and be super open and honest and transparent as possible with any loved ones. Communication is vital. And you also have to understand that while this may be your world, it may not be their world, and they may not have any idea. My partner has no clue what the realities of living in the woods for 5 months are. So despite trying to explain it, they also don't totally understand it. So communication is vital. And it's a trade-off, especially something like a Thru-Hike. The reality is trail life is likely going to mean that you are going to miss some birthdays, anniversaries, or even the latest drama on The Bachelor. The upside is that the trail gives you space to appreciate what really matters, sort you through your thoughts, but the big downside is missing important events and also relying on other people to fulfill your life obligations while you're out having fun on this adventure. So don't forget to put yourself in your friends' or family's position who might be helping out with things like your children or your pets or your home or your vehicles or any variety of things while you're gone. If you're doing a longer trip, you're going to have to rely on other people, and it's really important to do that in a well thought out, respectful way that maintains those relationships. Number one, you want those relationships to be in good shape when you get home. But number two, you don't want your trip to be derailed by drama at home. So everything you can do to avoid it, I recommend. Okay, so here's the thing about this night that I had to camp alone. I've camped alone a gazillion nights in my day, and the entire beginning of the PCT. But about a month in, I formed a family. I met this really cool a group of people, and we kept traveling together. We were mostly staying together, and we had been for quite a while. And it was the first time I had fallen behind. I wasn't feeling well. And there also were a lot of forest fires in the area. And as the day started to come to a close, I realized that I wasn't going to make it to the campsite where everybody was headed. You know, we had talked about where we were going to meet in the morning, and I just wasn't going to make it. So I sent them a message to let them know that I was going to have to do my own thing. I'd catch up with them tomorrow. But smoke was rolling in from a nearby fire, and as the sun was going down, and if you've never been in forest fire smoke, it is eerie. Like, it's not like fog, it casts this strange light everywhere. It's creepy. It wasn't dangerous, but it just created this like eerie, unsettling atmosphere. So while in no imminent danger, I was a little uneasy, to be honest. And then, in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of something moving in the trees. And, like we do, I froze. My heart was racing. If I don't move a muscle, surely they won't know I'm here. I eventually grabbed my flashlight, pointed it into the trees, and it was a deer. It was a deer munching on leaves like it owned the frickin' place, because it kind of does. But the whole experience just taught me that fear is not going to just go away, even for like a seasoned hiker. This is not my first rodeo, and even still, I felt it after getting comfortable camping with other people for a while. But you move through it, and that night reminded me that it's just part of the journey, It's what makes these victories feel so rewarding. You've got a story to tell, right? Okay, back to relationships. So You should not be overwhelmed by relationship stress because most people in your life are super excited for you to succeed. They may not get why you want to sleep in the dirt for fun, but they're going to root for you once they see how happy it makes you. So as long as you communicate and make it easy for them to help you, they're going to be ecstatic to do so. Communication tools make staying connected easier than ever. Things like Wi-Fi in trail towns or GPS devices like a Garmin InReach Mini 2. That's what I carried. Garmin has a new messenger that allows you to send photos and videos. There are options now in this day and age where you don't have to be as disconnected as one would have 15 years ago or even 4 years ago. But a few tips. Before you plan your trip, make sure that you have a plan with everyone at home and that you've arranged for check-ins if you plan to check in. Maybe on a Thru-Hike, it's a weekly text or call. Maybe it's every trail town you're hopping on a FaceTime. If it's a shorter trip, maybe it's, every afternoon, evening, you'll send a check-in from your Garmin. Whatever it is, just make sure the expectations are set beforehand. Share your itinerary, your expected return date. I guess these are more safety things, but they play a component in your relationships because it's not just about safety. It also helps your loved ones feel connected to your adventure if they are part of it. And if you're worried about guilt about going off, having this amazing adventure, here's my advice. Channel it into something positive. Do something fun for your kids. Organize something in advance for them to open while you're away. Or send them something from every little trail town. Or I don't know. The possibilities are endless. Just don't neglect your relationships at home. Again, not a huge issue for short trips. Not that relevant. But especially for week-long, longer trips, through hikes, it's really something to consider. Okay, next up is failure. The fear of not finishing. I'm familiar with this. Luckily, I finished the PCT, but I've done a handful of ultra marathons in my day, and I know what it's like to DNF and not finish. And this one's pretty legit. This one's a big one. But here's the thing, is the trail doesn't hand out grades. There are so many purists on the trail, but the thing is, whether you hike 2 miles or 2,000 miles, you're still a hiker. And I would argue that, if you have to skip a 7-mile section of the PCT because you're sick and over it, need a mental health day, if you had to skip for forest fires, I'm not a purist. That's what I'm getting at. So while I understand the fear of not finishing, it's all relative. And the fact that you even, not to be a corny cliche, but the fact that you even set foot on the trail to begin with, the fact that you were even brave enough and did all the work to get organized and get there is pretty cool in its own. It's natural to feel disappointed if you have to step off the trail. I had a medical issue, a huge back issue for a couple weeks. And, I'd love to say I just masterfully dealt with it, and I did deal with it okay. Reframing your goals can really help. But it's hard. It's disappointing. The fact is we all start the trail expecting to finish, but the even harder fact is that less than 30% of thru-hikers finish the PCT or Appalachian Trail many years. So you are not alone if life, injuries, or other priorities change your plans. Or if on a thru-hike, if you decide you just aren't that into it. That's okay. That happens. I would say, after the Sierras on the PCT, I saw so many people quit. In some ways, the peak, the pinnacle of the trail, the most beautiful section, in some's opinion, has happened. And I saw it happen to so many people. They'd been doing this for 3 months, 2.5 months at this point. So that's my point, is they had still done something absolutely incredible, but they were over it. It was awesome. They'd had a blast, but it was starting to get hard. That's when it started to get really hard. That's when the fun started to be a little bit harder to find. And I completely understand. So don't rake yourself over the coals. The thing is, every step that you take is a win, and the lessons you learn, all the people you meet, all the memories you make, that is worth more than, being able to say that you finished. Finishing is great, but it's not everything. So focus on milestones, not the finish line, and celebrate small victories. Celebrate your first 15-mile day, your first 20-mile day, learning to use bear canister without crying. There's lots of small things to celebrate other than just the big finish. Next, be kind to yourself. Your hike does not have to look like anybody else's. And, if you didn't train beforehand, it's not advisable, but it's totally doable. You should absolutely still do the trail, but you're going to have to know that you are not as trained as other people and you're not going to be able to keep up with other people. So you just have to be ready for that. You have to keep your expectations in check and don't expect yourself to be a superhero. You're human. You know what? And if you're feeling overwhelmed, you could also grab my free ebook, Trail Boss, a semi-helpful guide to conquering your backpacking fears. It's full of all kinds of advice. This advice that I'm sharing, the advice from all of the other videos, as well as more helpful tips and tricks that aren't in the videos. So if you're loving this series and you want to tackle more of your backpacking fears, check out the full Trail Boss playlist. Just click the link to find it in the description below. From money to logistics and snakes, we're breaking it all down. One fear at a time. So there you have it. Social stress might feel like a big obstacle, but with a little prep, it's totally manageable. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and check out the links in my description for all my gear recommendations, links to my group trips, and of course, my free ebook, Trail Boss, a semi-helpful guide to conquering your backpacking fears. And stay tuned for the next episode where we are going to tackle money, logistics, and hitchhiking. Until then, happy trails, y'all. Want to watch another video? Click here. Want to learn more about my upcoming trips? Click here. Want to subscribe and like all my videos and turn those bell notifications on?